Welcome in to Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and we've got a jam-packed show on tap for you today. The Texans, do they want a brand new stadium? Is Will Anderson the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year next season? And are the Texans, are they going to land one of those top free agents that everybody's clamoring about this offseason? Before we get into all that, I want to hear from you. Our first topic today, we're going to be talking about the Texans and NRG Stadium. In your opinion, if you've been to NRG Stadium, maybe if you haven't, if you've just seen it online, if you've seen pictures of it, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think the Texans need a new stadium? I want every single person that comes across this video, I want to hear your viewpoint because I want to see it from all angles. I want to see all different vantage points, what everybody thinks about the Texans and their current stadium, NRG. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think the Texans need a new stadium? The Texans, do they want to do stadium? Yeah, that is for Toro heads 100%. The Texans are looking at a new stadium. They want a new stadium. The whole thing, though, is are they going to be able to get a new stadium? The Texans, all reports indicate, are looking at a new stadium. They're looking like they want to either renovate NRG or be on the move and go somewhere else. All those reports coming in from the Houston Chronicle, from other sources saying the Texans and the Houston Rodeo are currently under lease negotiations with Harris County because they are current tenants at NRG. Maintenance and upgrades are projected to be around $1.4 billion to fix NRG Stadium. And that's not even with some of the things that the Texans would want to add to a NRG Stadium, like, more suite levels closer to the field and, more areas for people to watch the games at, like bars and stuff around the stadium. That begs the question, will the Texans look to build a new stadium, and are they looking to upgrade their current spot at NRG? Now, if you haven't seen this video, I made this roughly about a month ago. The Texans, right after they hired new team president Mike Tillman, I broke down exactly why I thought that meant the Texans are getting a new stadium or at least stadium upgrades. Because something you need to know about Mike Tillman, he used to work for Legends, which is a stadium operation company co-founded by Jerry Jones. The past three teams that he's worked with, Dallas Cowboys, they got a brand new stadium in AT&T Stadium. He worked with Los Angeles. They got a new stadium in SoFi. He worked with Las Vegas. They got a new stadium in Allegiant. And he's worked with Buffalo, which they're looking at getting a new stadium up there as well for the Bills. And if you haven't read it already, John Alexander of the Houston Chronicle put out an awesome piece. And here's a snippet from it that I thought was very, very interesting around, NRG Stadium and what we could see from it. The Harris County Houston Sports Authority, the joint venture that financed Houston's stadium building spree in the late 1990s and early 2000s, still owes $1 billion in principal debt on the bonds that paid to build NRG, Dakin Park, and Toyota Center. It is not scheduled to pay them off until 2056. That's absolutely wild. I mean, you still owe $1 billion for NRG Stadium, and we're talking about building a new stadium, right? We're like, you're already $1 billion in the hole, and we're talking about building a brand new stadium. And I get the Texans, they want a new place. And after, they did some internal, looking at the stadium, having some people come out and kind of look at what the stadium needs, it came out that NRG Stadium is right now a little bit below average, on par with the rest of the NFL in terms of stadium experience and just how upgraded the stadium is overall. The article from John Alexander went on to say this: the Texans also benefited from a team-friendly deal at NRG Stadium for the last 2 decades. The team put up revenue from permanent seat licenses towards the construction of the stadium, but it does not have to contribute towards most maintenance costs, unlike the Rockets and the Astros. The county, Harris County, is on the hook for those costs at NRG Park, and the Texans often get more money in tax rebates than they have to pay in rent. according to financial audits, meaning the government essentially pays the team to play at NRG. And I mean, we all, if you are a, older Texans fan, if you've been around, if you were there whenever the Oilers left in the late 90s and the Texans came in the early 2000s, you knew it was a whole ordeal for Houston to get another football team, and that Houston basically fronted a lot of the bill for the Texans to have NRG Stadium and to bring another NFL team to the city of Houston. Personally, I would rather see them renovate NRG and finally do something with the Astrodome rather than go out and build a new stadium. That's what I would personally want to see. But we also know that's easier said than done. How long have we been talking about what is Houston going to do with the Astrodome? What are the new plans for the Astrodome? Is it going to be a new mall? Is it going to be a new outdoor venue? Are they just going to tear it down and build something else there? We've seen it all there before. So I do get the sentiment of wanting a new stadium, but I personally would like them to try to just renovate the stadium and kind of build up what's already there. Now, I say that there are problems with renovations. There are problems with trying to have the Texans just renovate NRG. First off, when do they renovate? Because as I said at the beginning of the show, the Texans are not the only, entity that uses NRG. Also, the Houston Rodeo, one of the most beloved events in the city of Houston, also has its home at NRG. So if you're going to do renovations, when do you exactly plan to do that? Because, the Texans season ends, hopefully in February with the Super Bowl, but at the end of February, right? That's when the Texans season ends, per se. And then at the end of February, beginning of March, that's rodeo season. So you can't really start on renovations until after March, and then you only have a couple months to work with before the Texans try to go back to the facility for, OTAs, team minicamps, and stuff like that. So it's a very, very small window because the Houston Rodeo basically takes up one of those months that normally would have been used for renovations for the stadium. So that's one big issue. Another one, I told you at the beginning of the show as well, $1.4 billion is the estimated cost to just refurbish the stadium and fix the stuff that needs fixing. And that's not even, taking into account if they want to build more suites, if they want to upgrade certain things that don't necessarily need to be upgraded, but the Texans organization wants to be upgraded for a new stadium. So it's going to be well over $1.4 billion just to fix up NRG, a little fixer-upper. And if you've ever owned a house, if you've ever, seen, had to deal with real estate, in some instances, it's much easier just to go out and buy a new house than it is to fix up an old house that has a ton of problems. And that's where the Texans have a problem in this, is that it actually might be a little cheaper for them to just build a new stadium rather than fix up NRG. And if we're talking about everything around NRG, like the Astrodome, like NRG Park right next to it, like that whole area is going to cost a ton of money to fix. And lastly, can they make the fixes that they want with how NRG is built currently? Because you're not going to be able to, expand certain areas, do certain things in the stadium. Like, it's how it is already. The bones of the stadium are already there. You can't kind of fix the, dimensions of what NRG already is. So that's another hurdle that they're going to have to go through with renovations. I don't think we're nearly even close to knowing what the Texans are going to do with this stadium and what they're going to do moving forward. But it is something that we will be breaking down continuously here on the channel to give you updates and let you know what's going to be happening at NRG Stadium. Now, coming up next, more Texans news, more Texans rumors on tap for you on today's show. Had to lead off with NRG because that's maybe one of the biggest stories going on around the Houston Texans right now. And it's crazy because we're about to hit NFL free agency as well. Before I tell you about those other stories, my friends over at Fanatics, they got you covered. NRG is going to be expensive. You know it's not expensive. All the stuff they have on sale right now over at Fanatics. All you got to do, go to chatsports.com/Texans sale. They have a ton of items available for you all on sale today. So go check them all out. Do a little window shopping, a little perusing. You never know. You might see something and you're like, dude, I can't pass up on this deal. There's a lot of good ones out there. So once again, that's in the comments, descriptions of today's video. Go to chatsports.com/Texans sale to check out all the sale items that they have on Fanatics for Houston Texans gear, for Houston Texans, cups, stickers, everything. They got you covered with everything over there. Go check it out. Once again, comments and description of today's video. Next up on the show, Will Anderson. Is he a Defensive Player of the Year favorite going into next season? This one is two Toro heads. A small shred of truth there. I was looking up online, and my boss actually sent this to me earlier today. The latest 2025 Defensive Player of the Year odds, which, funny, the top of this list is Myles Garrett, who we don't even know what team he's going to be playing for next season. Next up on the list is Aidan Hutchinson, who we haven't seen. Last time we saw him on the field, he had that gruesome injury up against the Dallas Cowboys. So we haven't seen him in action since the injury. Then we have Micah Parsons, then we have TJ Watt, and then Will Anderson Jr. right there in fifth in terms of odds for Defensive Player of the Year going into 2025. I mean, I think he 100% deserves to be in the conversation. And I truly believe if he didn't miss games this season, he could have easily been in contention for that award this year. He was on a tear. He did miss a couple of games throughout the year with, some nagging injuries, and the Texans obviously made the right decision trying to prioritize his health over, playing an extra 2 or 3 games this season. But 37 tackles, 11 sacks, 16 tackles for loss in his second year in the NFL. I know we talked about C.J. Stroud having a sophomore slump. There was no sophomore slump for this guy right here, Will Anderson Jr. He was fantastic this year for the Houston Texans, and I cannot wait to see how he plays in 2025. If you agree with me in that Will Anderson Jr. is a cornerstone of this franchise, I would say just as much as C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson is a cornerstone of what you need to build this franchise off of. If you agree with that, go down and like today's video, because I know quarterback is the most important position on the team. But as we saw in the Super Bowl, edge rushers make a massive impact in the NFL in today's game. And Will Anderson Jr., I believe, is going to be a top 5 edge rusher for many, many years to come. Now, last storyline that I got to break down on today's show, the Texans, are they landing a top free agent? I'm not just talking about any free agent. I'm talking one of the best free agents out there. I'm going to only give this one Toro head. I really don't see it, even though every NFL pundit is predicting or saying the Texans are going to sign this guy, the Texans are going to sign that guy. I just don't see it unless there are major roster moves made. I'm talking about some major trades. I'm talking about cutting some starters on this team. The Texans cannot afford top free agents. It just can't be done. They're going to need to penny pinch and find guys who fit the schemes, fit the system, who are less expensive than the top guys. I've seen Trey Smith projected to the Texans on multiple sites and multiple occasions, and no way do I see the Texans being able to pay the $20 million a year price tag that goes along with Trey Smith. A lot of people are projecting, 5 years, $105 million. So that's around $21 million a year for Trey Smith. The Texans only right now currently have, depending on what site you look at, anywhere from like $6 to $8 million in cap space. You're telling me they're going to sign somebody for $20 million a year? I just don't see how that's possible. And then I saw other websites saying the Texans are a top landing spot for Chris Godwin. I know he got injured this past year. He's played a lot in this league. He's still 28 years old and a very good receiver. The projection from Spotrac was $22.5 million a year. The Texans aren't paying that either. They're paying Nico $24, $25 million a year. They're not going to sign somebody in free agency off the streets for just under that amount when they don't even have that much to begin with. So with all these articles saying the Texans are going to sign this big name, obviously it's just, that name value to get you to kind of click in and be like, oh yeah, the Texans could sign Trey Smith, where I actually believe there is not a possibility that the Texans make a move like signing a Trey Smith or a Chris Godwin. That's all I have for you on tap for today's show. Make sure you hit that sub button. We just passed 27,000 subscribers. Thank you to everybody that went ahead and hit that sub button this month, but we're not done. I'm trying to get to 30,000 subs before the start of the NFL draft. So if you love the Houston Texans and if you love free content, hey, that's all I do here on Texans Today. Free videos all year long on your Houston Texans. All you got to do, go down and hit that sub button.